Hello, my friends. What do you call a dentist who cleans a werewolf's teeth? I call him crazy. Be sure to subscribe to my channel. Now you listen to me, boy. You are going to stay in here until you don't hear any more sounds. Do you understand? Don't come out for anything. They've come for you, those goddamn Bible-thumping assholes. Just like your father said they would. When it's quiet, and you make sure it's good and quiet. Do you hear me? She shook his shoulders until he nodded vigorously. 4 car doors slammed shut outside. You run right into the woods, she said. Marie shoved him into the crawl space and started to put the panel back on. Before she closed it for good, she looked at him. Just her eyes peered at him over the top of the thin wooden panel. Her eyes drank him in. They were so round, he thought they might pop out of her head. They quivered there, scanning his face, tears ready to abandon ship at any moment. A familiar voice floated into the trailer from the group outside. Marie, my child, you have been blessed to serve the Lord. Don't make this difficult for yourself or your boy. It is an honor to sacrifice the life of your womb to our master, said Pastor Quinn. Marie's eyes flicked sideways towards the door for one moment. I'm sorry, Joseph. I'm sorry for everything. Marie placed the wooden panel back in place and pushed the hanging clothes in front of it. Joseph was left in darkness as he heard her shut the accordion door and move to her bedroom. A policeman's voice came over the loudspeaker. Marie, come out with your hands up. We don't want any trouble. Bring the boy out quietly and you will be rewarded. Try to hide that boy and suffer the consequences. Marie walked into her bedroom and pulled a shotgun out from under the bed. She threw dirty clothes and trash around wildly until she found the box of shells in the corner. She sat down and shakily loaded the shotgun and put the rest of the ammunition in her front jeans pocket. She snapped the gun shut and walked to the hallway, just beside the trailer door. She loaded the chamber with a satisfying and threatening double click. He ain't here, numbnuts. That boy hasn't slept here for at least a week. Sleeps out in the woods in a bunker about a mile from here, she said, hoping with no real hope to get them away from the trailer. Come on out, child, and we can find him together, the pastor said with words as smooth and sweet as molasses. Joseph, she said quietly to the shut closet behind her. When they leave with me, run away from here. Get the hell out of this place and don't look back and don't look for me. Don't even wonder about me. Marie, I'm counting down from 5 and if you don't open that door at 1, I'm blowing it wide open. You got that? The policeman shouted. The policeman was named Ricky Bowman and he made his share of visits to Marie late at night when the mood struck him. He even helped Joseph when he broke his ankle falling out of a tree as a young boy. Ricky stayed with Joseph in the hospital until Marie finally came to get him, slurring and wobbling in a drunken stupor. Don't you give one good goddamn shit about me after this, you hear me? Marie said to the closet with forced harshness. I never did right by you. Get the hell out of this evil pit while you still can. With that, Marie unlocked the trailer door and kicked it open, firing the shotgun first at little Dickie Ricky the policeman first. It struck him square in the crotch and he crumpled like paper. Marie reloaded and felt a fireball of pain shoot through her shoulder. She stumbled backward and saw a town elder standing with a smoking pistol. It was Edward Myers, a man that was nearly 90 years old. His eyes seemed black with violence. She could see the evil that had infiltrated Dolores Thorne at the drawing within Edward now. The thing manipulated his old body, that she now realized was usually in a wheelchair, and stepped forward with the energy of a much younger man and fired again. The shot hit her in the stomach and she fell to the floor of the trailer. Marie managed to push herself out of the doorway and leaned against the wall next to the closet. She used her numb legs to push herself up the wall slowly, holding her dripping insides with one hand and the shotgun with the other. She sputtered up blood and painfully pushed herself up higher on the wall. She forced herself to stand, clutching a midsection that was nearly see-through. She placed the butt of the gun against her shoulder and steadied herself with a bloody, lipless snarl. "Come on, you idiots!" she screamed. Marie breathed out slowly like Frank had taught her to do when they went hunting. She could hear the quiet woods around her like they were that day when they were just two kids in love. The sun shimmered through the leaves and the birds twittered softly all around them. She had a buck in her sightline and Frank stood behind her whispering instructions. "Wait, wait." Now, he had said with such a lulling whisper that it seemed to hypnotize her. She pivoted just 2 inches around the tree until the barrel of the shotgun was perfectly aligned with the target. She squeezed the trigger. Marie squeezed the trigger just as the gun's barrel centered on the pastor's shocked face. With a roaring sound his head imploded, and his body, gaudy with harvest-time gold and red robes, slumped to the ground. Marie's hands lost feeling and the shotgun slid out of her hands. She collapsed to her knees, and her eyes met the elder's. The evil thing in him moved the old man's face to smile so wide that his dry, thin lips ripped in 2 places. Bye, Marie," it gurgled. The thing aimed at her head and fired. Joseph held his hands over his ears and held his eyes closed so hard that it hurt. He was trying not to moan. The silence made him take his hands away. He heard slow footsteps moving up the steps and more cars pulling up in the driveway. He could hear more townspeople getting out and shouting and talking in the chaotic orchestra of a mob. They waited outside while the old man searched the trailer. Joseph put his hands to his mouth now as the footsteps shuffled past the closet door. They moved to the 2 rooms in the trailer and he thought he could hear whoever it was smelling the air. The feet stopped in front of the closet door and pulled it open. Joseph could hear the hangers scratching on the pole and then the voices outside grew louder. "There's a body in the woods, all burned up by the fire," one person said. The thing in the closet stepped out and walked back out of the trailer. "If it's not the boy, find him. I want him found before the sun goes down and brought to the circle alive. Take this whore's body with you and string her up," the elder said. "Yes, sir," a voice replied. The sounds of people dispersing surrounded the trailer and then there was nothing but silence. Still, Joseph waited for an hour before he could move. He hoped they had taken her body. He did not want to see it. Without seeing the body, he could pretend she was still alive somewhere, at least for a little bit longer. Joseph put his hands on the ground to push himself up and his hand touched something hard. He picked it up. His eyes had adjusted slightly to the dark and with a small sliver of light coming through a crack in the panel, he could see that it was a wooden box. He held it up to the grainy light and recognized it as his mother's box that she kept under her bed. He had never been brave enough to look in it, but he felt that she probably kept something bad in it. The drugs that took her spirit away maybe. In a moment of overwhelming loss, Joseph hugged the box to him and cried with a force that left him gasping for air. His face felt as hot as flames and his sorrow seemed to him an endless black pool that he was drowning in. Then it was more like a black night sky with no stars and he was falling from high up and his stomach was flipping nauseously with a plummeting sensation. He felt utterly and completely alone. When his tears were spent, Joseph slowly made his way out of the closet and snuck out of the window of his bedroom and straight into the woods. He took the book and the box with him and nothing else. He headed for the only place he could think of where he might be safe. Anna, having waited on the road for over an hour with no sign of a town messenger, made her way back home. A feeling of wrongness flooded her body. They had never been late before. She had heard nothing of the selection for the harvest and nothing from her master. She went back to the farmhouse and started to pace. She looked out of her curtained window periodically. Paranoia begins to set in. On her third trip to the window, Anna saw that the sun was nearly set. The sky was still orange with the last light and the woods were quiet and peaceful. Something was wrong. She scanned the woods and her heart stopped for a moment when she noticed a white face peering at her from behind a tree. Anna jumped back from the window for a moment and then looked again. It was the face of a terrified boy. The boy from town. The boy she saved. Suddenly, filled with an anger that was more fear than rage, she stormed out of the house and walked straight towards the boy. Unbelievably, he didn't flinch away. He stared at her, with a look that she had originally mistaken for fear. She now realized that the boy was in shock. She approached him, and he stood there, unmoving, clutching a book and a small wooden box. Before she could say anything, he spoke. "They killed her. They killed my mother," he said, and he sank to the ground and laid there as limp as a rag doll. Anna stared down at him at a complete loss for words. She felt the air start to sizzle with electricity and the sun sank further below the tree line, making the forest look like it was burning all around them. Anna picked the boy up and he did not resist. He just stared at the ground and clutched his possessions with a grip like steel. She carried him into the house quickly. Joey awoke with a start as cold water splashed his face. He screamed and sat upon the ground of a large room. He looked up and saw Anna standing over him. "You need to wake up," she said. Joseph sat up and slowly got to his feet. He looked up at her and summoned all the courage he had left. "I need your help. I have no one else. Something is happening in my head and they took her. They came for me and she protected me. My mother protected me." His voice cracked as he finished his plea. "You are the chosen one for the harvest, then?" "I think that's what they were saying, but I thought it was never kids. I thought I would be out of here long before I ever had to face the drawing. Almost everybody sends their kids out of here now. My mom couldn't afford it." "How old are you?" she said finally. "I just turned 13. Today actually. Today is my birthday," with a moment's spontaneity and quite frankly, stupidity that Joseph hadn't expected, he reached forward and hugged her. Before Anna could push him away, and maybe even slice him open right then and there, a burst of light went off in her head. Both Joseph and Anna both felt a warm and powerful light turn on inside of them and spread outward. It was like being in a giant tray of sunlight. Suddenly, they were in a dream or a vision, and they were there together as of one mind. Anna was flying high in the sky, her hawk wings making a shadow on the green, fluffy treetops below. She approached a mountain. The mountain was grey like steel and looked as impenetrable. It was so tall that its peak disappeared into the clouds above. She circled it, feeling the sky darken. Her heartbeat increased as that thick electric feeling filled the air. She circled down to the base where a dark cave yawned out from the ground. In front of it lay a trio of sleeping dogs as big as lions. She landed before them and approached the brood. An ear perked up, then an eye opened and a great rumbling sound began. It vibrated the earth beneath her. It was the low growling of the beast. 3 heads raised up, and then she saw it for what it really was. It was one animal with 3 heads, and it was guarding the cave. She knew instinctually that it was the gates to hell. Cerberus and the siren regarded each other for a moment, and then the growling stopped. In Cerberus she recognized the boy, and, in the siren, he recognized Anna. A sound like a bell chiming in a great tower, or cavern, began, and Cerberus bowed its head. Anna, against her will, knelt too. In the eternal bellowing of the underworld, Anna and Joseph recognized their true ruler. In that vibrating, world-ending, death toll, the 2 ancient beings heard the demands of Hades, their lord. Whatever petty, evil thing had been living in their town, it was certainly master of none. It had leached on their town since settlers first arrived, preying on the sinning minds of the fearful and mortal. The little demon was being summoned back to its own master, straight down to the depths of hell where it belonged. The 2 awoke from their shared dream back in the farmhouse, arms wrapped around each other. They backed away from each other for a moment. The boy bent down and grabbed his mother's wooden box. He handed it to Anna. She opened the lid and pushed aside some plastic bags and coins and cigarettes to find a grainy photograph. She lifted it up and saw a picture of a handsome, radiant man, smiling with a fishing pole dangling a puny-looking fish on the end. His other arm was around a taller man who she quickly recognized as her father. "This is my father," Joseph said of the man with the fishing pole. "They say he went crazy and wandered into the woods to kill himself, but no one ever found his body. I think he knew about all of this. I think he knew what was wrong with me, why I see these things. I think he saw them too. The writing on the back says Frank and Cherith, that's your father, isn't it?" Anna stared at the photograph of her young, happy father with his friend. He had talked about Frank. She didn't know he had a son. Her father had simply told her that Frank didn't want to follow the rules of the harvest and he met his fate. That's why she supposed he had never questioned the work they did. He knew what would happen if they didn't do their duty. "Yes. Cherith was my father," she said. "He talked about your dad sometimes. He loved him," she said and looked at Joseph. His eyes were fiery like her father's had been. They were of the same kind of being. They were primal and born of the fire. She was cold and cut from ice. She was meant to confuse and manipulate for the good of the harvest, an ancient female predator from a long line of sirens which had lured mortals to their deaths with hypnotic songs and open arms. Her father, on the other hand, was a gatherer. He was vicious when he turned to the wolf. But this boy, he was powerful, a protector. If he had her same affliction, and he turned, he would be far more powerful than she, and maybe... She stopped herself short of the thought. She thought of her father on his deathbed telling her to protect the town, herd her sheep and sacrifice one for the safety of many. But why? Why must they? And why had the master broken the rules and gone after a boy who just turned 13, the time of transformation? The dream came back to her. The dream that was not a dream but a shared vision. The boy and she had shared another realm. What fools they had all been.